One really simple way and hands-off way to preserve an abundance of cherry tomatoes is to dehydrate them. Here is a jar that we have left from last summer. And I'll go through making a few more here. We just have a really basic food dehydrator, and I use one of these plastic sheets on top of the regular tray. So once your tomatoes are washed and dry, you just cut them in half, lay them on your sheet, turn the dehydrator on to whatever setting is recommended for yours. Ours is set to 135. And then about once a day, I flip the tomatoes until they seem that they've been dehydrated enough. So once they're sliced, I just put them face up on the tray, and then once this tray and the next tray are full, I'll turn it on and then keep an eye on them until they're fully dehydrated. Here are the frozen cherry tomatoes. I just pulled them out of the freezer. They are all fully frozen at this point, so I can put them in a freezer bag for storage until I'm ready to do something with them. You can also just pull them out in the wintertime and use them in stews, just like this, in this form, or you can use them for other recipes, like salsas. And then here are the dehydrated tomatoes that we did the last 2 days. They are fully dehydrated, and they will also go in a storage bag or jar for longer term storage.
There's one more.
And then we need some basil.
All right.
We can get a jalapeno for Dad.
I want the jalapeno.
Ooh, it'll be a spicy one.
Like the dot. And
It has those scars on it. That means it'll be spicy. Like this. Find the stem. There you go. Perfect. I think that's all we need for our salsa. Zanny and I are going to use up some of our cherry tomatoes to make some fresh salsa. So we just picked some corn and basil and a jalapeno pepper. We already had lots and lots of tomatoes in the house. So we're just going to go through those. So we're cutting each cherry tomato into how many pieces?
4.
Yeah, 4 pieces. So it's nice and a nice chunky salsa. And then as she's working on cutting the tomatoes, I'm gonna work on getting some corn off the cob. We're gonna save some cobs for the kids just to eat corn on the cob tonight because they don't always love salsa.
So good.
The kids and I just cleaned, washed and de-stemmed these cherry tomatoes here, and we're going to be using this tomato press and sauce maker to prep the cherry tomatoes in order to make some tomato jam, which we'll finish up tomorrow. But today we're going to get them ready. And Julian and Vinny are going to be my helpers. They just went out in the garden and picked even more cherry tomatoes because they never end. So this is how we make tomato sauce to turn into jam or jelly. Put them all in.
Yeah, just grab
Yes,
it.
yes.
Just grab a handful and put them in. Squish. It's working.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Squirted me.
Sorry.
What's nice about this is it separates the juices and the tomato meat from the peelings and seeds. So we'll get a big container of the peelings and seeds, and then get a separate container of the sauce. So we made it through our pile of cleaned cherry tomatoes, Here is the bowl of skins and seeds, which will go to our chickens. It could have just as easily gone into the jam. You could also just, halve or quarter the cherry tomatoes and use them in that form. We have this contraption, so I thought we'd use it. The kids like to help out with it. So this is where all the tomato meat and juices come out, which we're going to use for the jam or jelly, I guess, because there's no seeds. And then this is the chute for the peelings or the skins and seeds. Here is the box for what we have. I just ordered it online, and it can also be used for other fruits and veggies, which is nice. And then tomorrow we will take our sauce and turn it into a tomato jelly. Alright, so it's the next day now, and I have the prepared tomato sauce juice here that we made yesterday. And I measured out about 4 cups in this saucepan, and I'm going to heat it up and boil it for 10 minutes. And then at that point, I'm going to measure out exactly 3 cups in order to make the jelly recipe that we're going to be using today. And then I may use this for something else later. I'm going to be adding some ginger, lemon juice, sugar eventually, and we'll be using Sure Gel. This is boiling. It's been boiling for about 1.5 minutes. We're going to let it boil for 10 minutes. This is a part that you could easily do differently. You could simply use larger tomatoes that are skinned and chop them up and boil them for 10 minutes without doing the sauce making. Because we were using cherry tomatoes, it would be pretty time intensive to peel the skins off of so many cherry tomatoes, so that's why we used that sauce maker. But you could definitely do it differently if you have different types of tomatoes available for you. While this is boiling, I was able to get some of our other supplies ready. So I have our canning pot ready with the riser, our funnel to pour into lids, or into jars, sorry. Our lids are sitting in what was boiling water, and our jars are sanitized. So once our jelly comes together, we'll move it over here and finish up the steps. So this has been boiling for 10 minutes. I'm going to reuse this to make the jelly. So I'm going to pour this into a separate container and then measure exactly 3 cups back into this pot. Wow, it turned out perfectly. So our about 4 cups boiled down to 3. To this, I'm going to add 1/4 cup of lemon juice. You could use fresh lemon juice. Also add some zest if you have it. I'm going to bring this back to a boil and then add our pectin. Okay. So I'm using Sure Gel and following a recipe accordingly. If you're using something else, make sure that you're following the recipe for that product. I'm going to add that to our tomato and lemon juice mixture and stir it in. I'm then going to bring this to a rolling boil, which essentially is a boil that doesn't stop even when you're stirring. Once that happens, I can add our sugar, which I have measured out here. It's so much sugar. 4.5 cups. So 3 cups of tomatoes prepared, 1/4 cup of lemon juice, and 4.5 cups of sugar is the recipe I'm using. I also added some ginger because I think we'll probably use this more on crackers or on hamburgers, things like that, as a relish. Okay, so we now have a rolling boil. I'm going to turn down the heat just a little bit and add our 4.5 cups of sugar. And at this point, we are going to return to boil and stir for exactly 1 minute. And then we'll be able to transfer this into our jars. So I'm going to get a timer out for once the sugar is stirred in. All right, so now this mixture is starting to boil, so I'm going to stir and set a timer for 1 minute. Set a timer for 1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute and counting.
Some people would also add a little bit of butter prior to this step in order to reduce foaming. That foaming isn't really something that bothers me, so I didn't bother to do it. You can add the butter to avoid it, or you can skim it off if you prefer, or not worry about it. I'm going to turn this down so I don't go over. All right, that is our timer. So I will remove this from the heat and move over to the other area to get this into jars. Okay, so this is the area where we will transfer the jelly into jars. I am starting to boil water on the stove in here that we will fill our canning pot with, and then we'll go outdoors and use a camp stove to do the canning process. We have an induction stovetop, which doesn't work with our canning jar. So I have sterilized jars here. I'm just gonna make sure that they're dry. All right. I like to just use a measuring cup to transfer. So this recipe filled these 6 jars exactly. There aren't any that are under or over full. So we'll be able to can them all. I'm going to go get a rag and clean the edges and then put our lids on, and then we will move outdoors. So here are the lids that were in our boiling water. And then we'll screw the tops on just finger tight. So we have our 6 jars that are very hot, but it looks really nice. It's a beautiful color. I bet this would make really good gifts too. So I'm going to finish boiling our water, and then I will bring the camera outside. All right, so we moved outside. I'm gonna forget about the mess in my kitchen for the time being. I have my water that was just boiling inside, so I'm going to add my jars. Your goal is to have water 1 to 2 inches above the top of the jars once they're all in. If you're short water, you can just add boiling water. can already hear the jars or the lids popping. And I can see bubbles coming out, which is exactly what you want. Just trying to get them all to sit properly here. Alright. So I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes. Set a timer for 10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes and counting.
And we will let these process in this water bath, and then they'll just sit out until they are cooled, and we'll check the seals. So 10 minutes has passed. I am now going to remove the jars. So here is another thing you can do with loads and loads of cherry tomatoes. You could certainly make this at a larger scale and season batches differently for different uses. I'm probably going to make some sauce with the remaining tomatoes from yesterday, and I might try canning whole cherry tomatoes as well.